Boruto's next Otsutsuki villain has already been teased, and it can change the story in not one but 4 different ways. All the theories about Amado being the mastermind will finally reach a resolution once we are done with the Shinju arc, which would begin the most awaited resurrection of his daughter. The revival could take place before, after, or in the middle of the shinobi extermination, based on what her role is going to be. Will she be unveiled as one of the missing Otsutsuki who were teased long ago? Is Amado trying to manipulate reality by making his daughter an Otsutsuki god, or are the writers planning to unveil an unexpected backstory for Kawaki? Well, all of that will be unveiled in this video, with the very first surprise hidden within the name of Akebi itself. So make sure to like and hype this video, and let's begin. The role and fate of Akebi Sanzu is the second biggest mystery in the story of Boruto, with the situation of Konoha from the prologue being the first one. Amado's strategic moves and planning are expected to have a really big payoff. Therefore, the resurrection of Akebi could become a big point of focus for the story, which will happen right after the Shinju saga. Looking at the preparation of Amado and the desperation of Kawaki, the most possible outcome could be that Akebi will get revived once Jura and the other Shinju get handled. Now it could happen before the event of Konoha's destruction, or possibly after that as an endgame villain occurrence. So what exactly could be Amado's plans with Akebi? Well, before I explain how her name may be linked to her role and fate in this story, there is something that you need to know about Akebi's mischievous ability, which has been cleverly foreshadowed in the manga. As we know, every cyborg of Amado has a different shinjutsu, which are purely based on computer programs. Like Aida's omnipotence is a root level programming language which rewrites reality by perception. Daemon's reflection can reflect attacks back, similar to the Daemon program, which works in the background like an antivirus. So taken in context of Mamushi battle, where Bug is the virus which can corrupt the programming language, Daemon is likely going to be the one to defeat him based on the antivirus analogy. Code was the computer code which activated the Shinju and the cyborgs, so his role has more to do with his name rather than the actual Shinjutsu of claw marks. But if you think about it, the claw marks actually acted as the bootloader or the access key to the Shinju based on how Code used them. In case of Kashin Koji, his prescience can foresee events like a predictive AI model or future event simulator. So all of them have something to do with computers, and since Delta still has to get her Shinjutsu, I feel like it will be Akebi who would awaken the divine power instead, due to the possible nature of her ability. Now this is gonna make some insane amount of sense, so hear me out. Just like Code and Daemon's roles are a mere reflection of what the computer programs of the same names can do, what if it's the same for Delta, or let's say Akebi in this case? The word Delta basically means change or difference between two things. It's a word used in math, science, and computers to show how something has moved or updated from one state to another. For example, if a file is edited, a delta update only saves what changed instead of the whole file again. So whenever you hear delta, just think of it as the amount of change that happened. Well, this more or less provides clarity on Delta and Akebi's present case in the story, rather than her potential future power. Amado had to create a number of different iterations of Akebi in hopes of revitalizing her consciousness, but unfortunately, all of them turn out to be Delta, as these versions were not the same as the original. However, there is one thing that hit my mind, which I believe would not only explain what the word Delta has to do with Akebi's Shinjutsu, but also her upcoming role, which would add some sense to the title that I gave her, the Karma Goddess. We know Amado is trying hard to make Kawaki use the karma in reviving Akebi, but we ain't counting for the possibility that the karma will then become her own, meaning she would have the capacity to use it at her own in order to create as many vessels as possible to avoid death. And this isn't something she will do by herself. It may be what Amado has planned to keep Akebi safe from any kind of threat. All the present versions of Delta or Akebi's clones will be updated with the karma, so that whenever the original karma wielder would die, the consciousness would simply passed on to the next vessel in line. Therefore, this is how Akebi would be made immortal by Amado. So even if Kawaki kills her, she would still get reborn as Delta. So this ability of her to revive or reboot hints at her executing Delta patches to restore her body to the previous stable version using the Karma seal. This could even make the Karma her signature Shinjutsu, as she would be able to use it as a proper resurrection art by utilizing it to restore, replicate, or patch her own biological code. In other words, she could show us the other ways of using the Karma seal, something that Boruto and Kawaki haven't discovered yet. So judging by this, Amado's plan must be to use the karma in making Akebi immortal, but she could herself become a difficult enemy to deal with if the karma ends up giving her all the powers of Ishiki or Otsutsuki. We could even expect her to have Shibai's powers, considering the possibility of Amado having the vision of making her the strongest cyborg. So there we have the first theory. Both Amado and Akebi could become Otsutsuki tier villains after the Shinju are handled. The proof comes from the time when Amado told Kawaki that he will do everything in his power to stop him if he ever tried to lay a finger on Akebi, and that would obviously be the case if she becomes an Otsutsuki, which is almost inevitable to happen based on the method that will be used to revive her. Now think of it this way, Amado already has a plan to deal with Kawaki once he revives Akebi, and the cyborg daughter of the scientist would herself become powerful after reviving through the karma. Doesn't that sound like the making of the most powerful duo of the verse? Well, this goes well with the missing Otsutsuki theory, as many people believe the father-daughter duo are the same beings whose panels had been destroyed in the Jubi dimension. But looking at the assumption that they were active on the planet even before the meetup of Jigen and Amado, this theory becomes kind of stretchy, so we will have to assume that Amado's plan is to make her the strongest Otsutsuki from scratch, someone on whom the rules of reality will not apply, as she would have unlimited Delta clones to revive, fulfilling the dream of Amado in getting over the fear of losing his daughter ever again. But then we have the question, what exactly is he trying to achieve? Well, the answer is pretty simple, it's transcendence. Amado's goal is to make Akebi follow the same route of becoming an Otsutsuki god that Ishiki had revealed to Code. By having many versions of her try and perform the same task, it will increase her success rate by a big margin, and maybe that's what Amado is actually up to. Well, that sounds all good in theory, but if that's true, then where does the resurrection of Akebi stand in the middle of everything which is going on in the story right now? Well, one thing that is clear to me is this plan of Amado becoming the trigger of attracting more Otsutsuki on the planet. So if we go by that logic, then Kawaki must revive her after he is done with ending the age of Shinobi, therefore confirming the event is yet to take place by the time this battle from the future is happening. But will Amado actually wait so long for his plans to finally succeed? Well, the resurrection taking place before the battle gives us a completely different way to look at the story. It has more to do with the new reveals and backstories of certain characters, but regardless of what time would be fit, the delta angle of having clones of Akebi with the same Otsutsuki DNA could be something that fuels another hidden agenda of Amado, and there is nothing in the prologue sequence which denies the possibility of him pulling this off. So what exactly is that becomes the question here. Well, I will need to give you some in-depth lore on Akebi's name before I reveal that. It's pretty interesting and hasn't been discussed before, so hear me out. Akebi's full name is richly symbolic, drawing from Japanese folklore to emphasize themes of death, transition and rebirth, which are core to the story of Boruto. Akebi is the name of a real purple plant in Japan, also called the chocolate vine in English. It's a climbing vine that grows in the mountains of Japan, China and Korea. Well, does that remind you of something? Take a look at the divine tree. It exactly matches the description of what Akebi actually means. So is this one of the hints for us to crack her ultimate role? Well, when you look at what her last name Sanzu means, things take an even interesting turn. The Sanzu comes from Sanzu no Kawa, which means the river of the three crossings. It's a river in Japanese Buddhist belief that the souls of dead people must cross in order to reach the afterlife. It is believed that every soul must cross this river after death on the way to the afterlife, as it lies between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The river has three possible crossings, and which one you face depends on how you lived your life. The first is the bridge of good deeds, which is crossed by those who had lived righteously. It's a smooth, bright bridge that safely leads to the other side. Then we have the shallow ford, for people who did both good and bad. The souls must go through gentle but tearing waters, which act as a kind of karmic cleansing. Finally, we have the deep hellish waters, which is meant for evil or selfish people. Under this river, the souls are dragged by demons, bitten by snakes, or even drowned under the current. So the Sanzu River functions as karmic judgment where the moral way determines one's route. Now picture it like this. Right now, Akebi is lingering between the afterlife and the current life, but I think the plans of Amado have given her a more unique and different purpose. She is literally intertwined between human life and transcending beyond human to become an Otsutsuki, which is what's going to happen after she's resurrected. But what if the other side of the river for her is not simply becoming an Otsutsuki, instead a god who cares about them? In other words, she could be walking down the path to become an Otsutsuki god, just as I theorized earlier. And when you connect this to how her name Akebi can be related to the divine tree, with the translation suggesting it's the climbing vine, everything makes perfect sense. Akebi is climbing the vine to achieve godhood, and in order for her to do so, she will need to obtain the chakra fruit of the planet first, with all of this being a part of Amaru's plan. Judging by this foreshadowing hidden in her name, it seems like Amado too wants to play God on everyone in order to win a future that would satisfy his desires. Remember how Jigen told him to not worry as everyone's wishes will be granted? Well, instantly after hearing this from him, Amado looked at Delta, and while at first it was assumed he looked at her cause his wish was to revive Akebi, I think there is another string attached which puts everything in perspective. It will be Akebi who is going to fulfill the wish of Amado in actuality, and she will do it after becoming an Otsutsuki god who can use omnipotence to create their desired world. The special panel of Volume 1 already confirmed that it is possible, which explains the true master plan of Amado, as well as why he looked at Delta when the wish was mentioned. So where does Kawaki fit into all this? Was his role supposed to be nothing more than being the activation tool of Akebi? When looking at the power climb of becoming an Otsutsuki and beyond, as well as Amado's obsession with Kawaki from the beginning, there is one theory which puts all the puzzle pieces together. Just like how most of the shonen series reveal a vital character as a blood relative of the main character, something similar might be going on with Kawaki, Akebi and Amado. You already know it's going to be the possibility of Kawaki being the son of Akebi and the grandson of Amado due to all the visual similarities and karma compatibility. But when you think of how Amado's vision is to create a new world by the power of gods, which needs him to climb the vines of the divine tree, something starts to make sense when you look at Kawaki and his actions from the future. What if it's the combined pact of the Sanzu family to create a new world? Therefore, the shinobi destruction would become a part of Amado's master plan. He has gaslighted Kawaki into believing that the system needs to change since it can collapse anytime. And looking at the tensions between the ninja nations due to the recent help that Konoha provided to Boruto, seems like everything is going according to the script. Upon reviving Akebi, Amado could reveal the family secret to Kawaki, which would likely stop him from killing his own mother. But at the same time, he would present the biggest flaw of the world to him that would never let peace sustain no matter the era, and that is the shinobi system. Before Otsutsuki or any third party, the reformer must first look into his own world in order to fix its flaws. In other words, the shinobis are too weak to protect themselves against the Otsutsuki, so the best way to reform them would be by the means of obtaining godhood and rewriting reality in humanity's favor. Moreover, instead of doing this alone, Kawaki will have the support of his own biological Otsutsuki family to achieve whatever he wants. Well, that pretty much sums up everything. Akebi will be the karma goddess, Kawaki will become the karma prince, and Amado will be the master manipulator who pulled this off, even after so many obstacles and hurdles. So here are the 4 possible ways for Akebi's resurrection to change the story. First of all, she could be one of the 2 missing Otsutsuki alongside Amado who lost their powers, and now they will get them back in the most reasonable way possible with the karma seal. Secondly, she could be the mother of Kawaki, which would become one of the triggers for him to end the shinobi age after the comments of Amado. Third, she may be an Otsutsuki experiment of the scientist in creating a being who would reach godhood to fulfill all his wishes. And finally, she could be the sacrifice to the divine tree, twisting the story into making Amado the greedy father who didn't actually want to revive his daughter but was more concerned about the power that she can grant him. Well, if you are still not subscribed, make sure to do it, cause the upcoming videos of mine are likely the best works on this channel. Also make sure to drop your opinions down below, and I will see you next time.